In recent years, there has been a growing interest in the idea of a universal basic income, or UBI for short. But what exactly is UBI? And how could it change how we live and work? In this video, we're going to explore the concept of UBI, its potential benefits and drawbacks, and how it's being tested and implemented around the world. From Silicon Valley entrepreneurs to progressive politicians, from social justice advocates to economic theorists, UBI has sparked a heated debate and captured the imagination of millions. Some see it as a bold and visionary solution to poverty, inequality, and automation, while others view it as a naive and unrealistic idea that could backfire and harm the economy. So what is the truth about UBI? Is it a utopian dream or a pragmatic policy? Can it provide everyone a safety net, or is it too expensive and unsustainable? And most importantly, how would it affect your life and the lives of those around you? What is UBI? Is it a utopian dream or a pragmatic policy? UBI stands for Universal Basic Income, which is a concept that proposes to provide every citizen or resident of a country with a regular, unconditional, and non-means-tested cash payment. The idea behind UBI is to ensure that every person has enough money to meet their basic needs, regardless of their employment status or income level. During the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, the U.S. government introduced several measures to support individuals and families who were struggling financially. One such measure was the stimulus payment, which provided eligible Americans with a one-time payment of up to $1,200 per adult and $500 per child. UBI is similar to the stimulus payment, but it would be a recurring payment given on a regular basis, such as monthly or quarterly. For example, if the U.S. government had implemented a UBI of $1,000 per month during the pandemic, every citizen or resident of the country would have received this amount, regardless of their employment status or income level. The idea behind UBI is that it would help reduce poverty and inequality and provide a safety net for those who may be struggling financially. For example, a single mother who lost her job due to the pandemic would have received the same amount of money as a wealthy businessman who continued to work from home. The question of whether UBI is a utopian dream or a pragmatic policy is a contentious one. Some argue that UBI is a utopian dream because it assumes that a government can afford to provide a basic income to all citizens without any negative consequences, such as inflation or disincentivizing work. Others argue that UBI is a pragmatic policy because it has the potential to address a range of social and economic issues, such as poverty, inequality, and the impact of automation on the labor market. One of the key benefits of UBI is that it could help to reduce poverty and inequality by providing a basic level of income to all citizens, regardless of their circumstances. It could also help to address the potential job losses that may result from automation by providing a safety net for those who are displaced from their jobs. Additionally, UBI has the potential to simplify and streamline the social welfare system by replacing existing programs with a single, universal payment. On the other hand, critics argue that UBI is not a pragmatic policy because it would be extremely expensive to implement and could lead to inflation or other economic issues. There are also concerns that UBI could disincentivize work, as people may be less motivated to seek employment if they are already receiving a basic income. What are the arguments for UBI? One prominent advocate of UBI is Andrew Yang, an entrepreneur and former presidential candidate in the United States. Yang's argument for UBI is that it is necessary to address the growing automation of the labor market, which is leading to job losses and economic insecurity for many people. According to Yang, UBI would provide a safety net for those who are displaced from their jobs and would help to ensure that everyone has a basic level of economic security. Another advocate of UBI is Rutger Bregman, a Dutch historian and author. Bregman argues that UBI is necessary to address the growing inequality and poverty in the world, and that it would be a more effective solution than traditional welfare programs. According to Bregman, UBI would help to reduce poverty, increase economic mobility, and provide people with more freedom and autonomy in their lives. The arguments put forward by Yang and Bregman are compelling. UBI has the potential to address a range of social and economic issues, including poverty, inequality, and the impact of automation on the labor market. By providing a basic level of income to all citizens regardless of their circumstances, UBI could help to ensure that everyone has a basic level of economic security and would provide a safety net for those who are displaced from their jobs. Additionally, UBI has the potential to simplify and streamline the social welfare system by replacing existing programs with a single universal payment. UBI can also help to increase economic mobility by providing people with more freedom and autonomy in their lives. With a basic level of income, people would have the flexibility to pursue education, start a business, or engage in other activities that may not be financially viable under current economic conditions. This could lead to greater innovation and entrepreneurship, which would ultimately benefit society as a whole. What are the arguments against UBI? Several groups and individuals are at the forefront of arguments against UBI, including some economists, politicians, and business leaders. These groups often raise concerns about the cost of implementing UBI, the potential for UBI to disincentivize work, and the impact of UBI on the broader economy. One of the primary arguments against UBI is that it would be too expensive to implement. Some economists and policymakers argue that the cost of providing a basic income to all citizens would be prohibitively high, particularly in countries with large populations or limited resources. They suggest that the funds required to implement UBI could be better spent on other social welfare programs or infrastructure projects. Others argue that UBI would disincentivize work by providing a basic income to all citizens, regardless of their employment status. They suggest that people may be less motivated to seek out work or to improve their skills if they are already receiving a basic income. This could lead to decreased productivity and economic growth over the long term. What are the factors that we need to consider before implementing UBI in any nation? Before implementing universal basic income, UBI, and political factors, as well as issues related to implementation and funding. One of the most important economic factors to consider is the cost of implementing UBI. Providing a basic income to all citizens would require significant government funding, and policymakers must carefully consider how this funding will be raised and allocated. This could involve raising taxes, cutting other government programs, or finding new sources of revenue. Social factors are also important to consider when implementing UBI. For example, policymakers must consider how UBI will impact social welfare programs and how it will interact with existing policies related to healthcare, education, and housing. They must also consider the potential impact of UBI on social mobility and inequality and how it could help to reduce poverty and promote greater equality. Policymakers must also consider how UBI will be perceived by the public and how it will impact political power dynamics. They must also consider how UBI will impact existing political structures and how it will be implemented and managed within the broader political system. Issues related to implementation and funding are important to consider when implementing UBI. Policymakers must develop clear guidelines and processes for distributing UBI funds and ensure that the policy is implemented fairly and transparently. They must also ensure that the policy is funded sustainably and does not create unintended economic or social consequences. The arguments against UBI are valid, but they should not be used to dismiss the potential benefits of the policy outright. While UBI would certainly come with its challenges and costs, it has the potential to address some of the most pressing social and economic issues of our time. Ultimately, the feasibility and desirability of UBI will depend on a range of factors, including political will, economic conditions, and societal values.